and thank you for joining me for the Vampire Talk Show. I'm your host, Valaine. Val to my friends. My roommate discovered my coffin under the concrete floor of the basement in her new house and woke me up from a 100-year nap. Now I'm reconnecting with old friends, making new ones, and of course, making a podcast. I have a fantastic guest for you tonight. However, I want to talk about something very near and dear and close to my heart, and that is one of my favorite holidays, Halloween. Halloween is coming upon us, and I had the pleasure of attending an adult Halloween party recently. Now, when it comes to Halloween, as children, we have a lot of fun trick-or-treating and, ghosties and ghoulies and long-legged creepies and everything else. The tricks, the treats, and, passing out after, a sugar rush and what have you. Adult celebrations, however, are interesting. I went to my first adult Halloween party. There were children there, but then it wound down to like an adults-only sort of party. Now, what's interesting is, first of all, everyone kept telling me how wonderful my costume was. In fact, I was not wearing a costume. I was wearing a gown, as one does on the weekends. So I don't understand what they were saying costume-wise, but, nobody dresses up anymore for parties. Anyway, it was interesting because, first there were kids running around and everything else, and then you had adults sitting in costumes and talking about medical procedures and 401ks and, sipping their beverages and eating. I feel like adult Halloween celebrations, at a certain point, become kind of sad. Not to say that they can't have them, but I don't know, maybe get a little wild. Maybe try to contact a UFO or, break out the Ouija board or something like that. Stay on theme. Keep Halloween in the party instead of turning it into a usual round the water cooler, hey, I just watched Seinfeld for the 7th time this year, how about you, sort of conversation. I mean, come on. We can do better than this. For being only in their 30s and 40s, they sure were acting like they were 700 years old, like myself. Anyway, I digress. My guest tonight is a historian, paranormal researcher, and psychic, as seen on Mysteries Decoded. Please welcome Stephanie Bingham.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming through the portal. I know it's a little weird for mortals, but your time and astral projection sort of travel is very much appreciated.
It's a hard travel.
It is. It is a little rough on humans. So, Stephanie, how are you with Halloween? Do you throw a party? Do you go to parties? Do you have children? Like, what does your Halloween landscape look like?
So Halloween is the best holiday, and I think we all know this. So, you've got to decorate the house, and you've got to get that all cute, and you've got to get the mummy set up in the door, and then you feed the children the treats as they come past, all dressed up in a gown, because what else do you wear on Halloween but a gown?
Absolutely.
And for me and my cat, she dresses up as well. And then after that, once all the kids are gone, what's the little seance between friends?
Absolutely. I think seances need to have a comeback to like parties and everything. I mean, not even just Halloween parties. I think anytime you have a group of people hanging out in a house for a little while, imbibing in whatever they want to, I think having a little seance is the perfect way to cap off a night,
What's a better after dinner activity than a seance?
Absolutely. Well, Stephanie, I am so glad you're here on the show. I Just so the listeners know, Stephanie and I met during Midwest Boo Fest. I had to, unfortunately, miss the lecture because, the sun and me do not mix. However, I did go on a spooky tour, lurking around at night in the city, and oh my goodness, that was so much fun. And I almost wanted to buy this place that was all lit up in red. It looked like a vampire bar already. So I'm thinking about moving out to southern Indiana.
I mean, it was a gorgeous location, and it's
Hmm.
nice and creepy and full of creepy crawlies. What more could you ask for?
Absolutely. I mean, the architecture alone in southern Indiana was just staggering, and mm, it felt doomy in the best sort of way.
It absolutely does. When you have, the apartment buildings built on top of several hundred graves, what else is going to feel like but doom?
Oh, speaking of graves, I actually also went to Eastern Cemetery. Wow,
Beautiful.
beautiful, sad but beautiful. And then the Cave Hill Cemetery, I think it's
Cave
called.
Hill.
Yes,
Hmm.
one of the biggest and most elaborate cemeteries I've ever seen in my life. And it just absolutely staggering. All of those places in this one area, and uh, I just I long to go back. So hopefully Midwest Boot Fest is gonna come back again next year, and I will see you then.
I'm hoping you're right. I think you're probably right.
Fantastic. Yes, no breaking news or anything here,
No.
listeners. Not at all. We don't know anything for sure. We're just hoping. Um,
Yeah,
so your lecture was on vampires, which
it was.
Allie told me everything about it, and I thought it was quite interesting. What is it about vampires that you find fascinating? And please don't hold back. Flattery is the best thing on the planet.
Always. Well, we all know that vampires are the best monsters. Like, there's nothing better than them.
I won't argue with
But
you
for
there.
me, absolutely. For me, it started out really when I was very young. I saw spirits and I didn't know what they were. So when I went to college, I wanted to give myself context for that experience. So I was looking at other cultures historically where women specifically were interacting with the dead and how they did it in societal constraints, essentially. Ended up falling on voodoo and the spiritualist movement, turn of the last century. And that is where I sort of spent all of my time in both undergrad and grad school. Try getting your grad school professors to approve you studying seances and ghosts. It was hard, but I did it.
Whoa, congratulations.
Thank you. It was hard. It was a trip. But one of the things I kept noticing, especially in the spiritualist documentation, were all of these anti-spiritualist documents that were coming up. And their big argument against the spiritualists was that they were encouraging psychical vampirism,
Oh.
which I thought was hysterical because my professor at the time is like, you're not going to find any documentation of vampires or psychic vampires specifically before you get into like the 1990s. And I was like, bet, you know.
Yeah.
He and I didn't get along. But I found these documents and I was like, this is fascinating. So from there, it just sort of went kind of sideways.
Hmm.
And I fell into the vampire panics because there were so many vampire panics. And you get like Mercy Brown and like your normal New England vampires.
Hmm.
But the further you dig down, you find all of these strange vampires that look very much like modern dogmen in like Idaho and Virginia and stuff like that. And I'm like, these don't look like the vampires that we're talking about here, and none of them look like Dracula. So what are we actually talking about? And
Hmm.
I fell down a rabbit hole because vampires.
Because vampires, yes. And there are a lot of different kinds of vampires out there. I
Yes.
mean, I usually have, when I meet some of Allie's friends, they ask me, if I sparkle, which,
No.
oh man, that just, that burns me up like the sun. And, it's, no. I do not sparkle, I burn. And, but the dogmen sort of vampires, I love this idea because you said like Ohio, Virginia, sort of, you know, I would say kind of backwoodsy if you had to,
Hmm.
which is interesting because you also have vampire. There's like a notorious beef between vampires and werewolves. So you'd think that a dogman esque, vampire might be more werewolf-esque, and then, but maybe on the outs with vampires. It's all very confusing. There's so many different bloodlines crossing, you know?
Absolutely. And you have to wonder if maybe the werewolf was masquerading as a vampire to the humans to just, mess with them and get bad press.
Oh, false flag operations by
There you go.
werewolves? Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh, the scandal. Ugh. Oh my goodness. So you actually went to school for this and you studied this and everything else. Have you written like a book or anything yet on this?
I have yet to write a monograph. I'm working on like a single publication book. You can find my stuff in the Feminine Macabre. And in
Mm-hmm.
volume 6, you'll actually find a document I wrote about Mercy Brown and what happened to her, one of the last New England vampires.
Hmm. Interesting. Yes, the Feminine Macabre, a lovely volumes collections of female writers in the paranormal. Some of them are actually on the coffee table downstairs. Um, and so you're in volume 6. That's excellent.
2, 4, and 6.
Four
Only
and
the even
six.
numbers.
4 and 6, actually, a couple of my luckiest numbers right there. 4 and 6.
There you go.
Oh yes. So vampires are your favorite monster, correct? But you
Yes.
have you have a collection of like ghost stories rattling around in your head as well, don't you? Like, is there
Of
a
course.
favorite ghost story of yours?
Like a personal ghost story or like a normal ghost story?
Let's go with personal ghost story. You know me, I'm a gossip columnist from back in the day. I love personal details and all the hot goss. So please.
Well, I have to say that the ghost story that people like to hear from me most often is the one that they think is going to be my scariest ghost story.
Ooh.
It's not the one that I consider the scariest, but it was pretty wild.
Okay.
This happened when I was in undergrad and college in Eastern Kentucky, of all places. I was up in the mountains. I was in my dorm. I had a roommate, all the college things. I was working on my undergraduate thesis on voodoo at the time. So steeped in all sorts of weird books and research and doing all the things. But, I was a studious kid, so I had no social life. And I lived on a suitcase campus, so everyone left on the weekends. And so I had this big old dorm essentially to myself. There might be 20 people left in this big 4-story dorm. Oldest dorm on campus, had been built on several times, nice and creepy. So I was hanging out there. But the actual occurrence started earlier in the week, and I didn't realize it until later. I had friends on campus who started coming to me, some of my girlfriends, and they were like, "Hey, I had this weird dream." To which I'm like, yes, I am the weird girl. I deal with the weird paranormal stuff. Sure, but why are you telling me about dreams? I don't deal with dreams. That's odd. Okay, I'll listen to your story and pat you on the head, tell you it's going to be okay, and send you on your way. But she's like, I had this nightmare and I woke up in the dream and I was laying on this bed without like any blankets or anything on it. And there was this little kid standing at the end of it smiling at me. And I was terrified. And I was like, that's a very strange dream.
Hmm.
I'm sorry that happened to you. I don't know what to tell you, but I'm sure it's fine. And then I heard a similar story from another friend where she also woke up on a bed and there was something, she said, standing at the foot of the bed smiling at her. And then I heard something else, and this was, I think, the day before the main incident happened, where one of my other friends was like, I had the weirdest dream. And I'm like, this is a bad sign. This is a real bad sign. Third time I'm hearing this. And she's like, I woke up in the bathtub, like in the dream. She woke up in a bathtub, like an old clawfoot, you remember those
Oh
with the
yes.
high
Oh yes.
sides? One of
Absolutely.
those. And she said she was laying in this old clawfoot tub, and standing on the edge of the tub looking down at her was a little girl, and she was smiling and she was terrified.
Mm.
And I was like, first couple of times I can ignore it. Third time, something is going on.
Well,
And
and
I
in
was like,
every story, it's the rule of three. So you know you have to take action after the third instance.
right. But it was still during the school week. I had things to do.
True.
So I told my friend, I will do some research over the weekend. I'll see what I can find. I don't have a lot to go on, and dreams aren't my thing, but we'll see what we can dig up. So this is my plan for the weekend, is to spend it in the library trying to figure out what in the world is haunting all my friends on campus. So, you're in college, you do what you do.
Hmm.
It's the weekend, you're doing laundry. I have no life. Laundry's in the basement of
I
the
love that
oldest
you're like,
building on
you
campus.
do what you do. I'm thinking frat parties. I'm
No,
thinking, streaking through the quad. No, you are doing laundry.
laundry. Very important. You start your day out with laundry. Where it ends up is the fun part. You know.
Oh my goodness. Scandalous.
So, you get your basket, you're going down into the basement of the creepy building to do your laundry. And I'm walking down the hallway. The only other person on my floor is my roommate, and I know that for a fact. And I open this big fire door. And you know when you're in the presence of something and you know it, like just the energy of the room, it's there and you
The
can feel it?
heebie-jeebies. Yes,
Yes.
very much
Like
so.
everything was electric. I knew something was there, but I kind of assumed it was one of the ghosts that lived in the building, and I didn't really think about it. So I closed the door behind me and I stood at the top of the stairs and started going down. And about that time, I felt these little tiny hands on the back of my thighs,
Ooh.
and she pushed me forward. I did the thing. You dropped my laundry basket, and I ended up falling about as far down the stairs as I am tall, so about a third of the way down the stairs
Oh,
before I grabbed the banister and was like, what is going on? And then I turned, and while I was still laying on the stairs, I looked back up at the top, and there standing was this little girl, cutest child I've ever seen in my life, wearing this sort of rose-colored nightgown. She had no shoes on, little hands sort of grasping at the sides of this little
yes.
nightdress, dark hair, dark eyes, and she was smiling at me.
Ooh, creepy.
And in that moment, I knew exactly why my friends were terrified. She didn't have teeth. She had little fangs. There was rows and rows of little sharp teeth in her mouth.
Oh my goodness.
And in this moment, I knew that my fight or flight response was broken because my instinct right then was to run back up to the top of the stairs. I was going to catch her. I have no idea what I was going to do when I got her, but I was going to catch her.
With a proton pack, how are you going to catch her?
I was trying to grab her. It was not smart. Everyone should do exactly the opposite of what I did right here. Do not run towards the fangy ghost. Don't do it. Bad plan. So I started back up the stairs, and by the time I got to the top of the stairs, my brain sort of caught up with me, and luckily for me, she was gone by then,
Mm-hmm.
but I was fully freaking out. So I ran back down the hallway to my roommate, and I was like, "You'll never guess what just happened." And so I tell her all this, and she's like, "Oh, about that." And I was like, "This isn't good." And so she goes under my bed and pulls out a little brown paper sack that she had put there with a string of beads. And she's like, "So my family went on this mission trip and they ministered to some people who didn't really want to be ministered to. And then they took a gift from them and they brought it home. And they've
Oh.
been hearing like weird sounds of like giggling and like footsteps on the stairs. And they were creeped out. So I brought it back to the dorm and I didn't think they were anything real. So I put them under your bed without telling you a
Oh.
week ago,
Oh.
right when the dream started. And I was like, that is awful.
That's
So many
terrible.
things wrong with this.
Oh my goodness.
So
It's so funny how humans they just have no like danger filter. I mean, even you like running to a ghost, but then you also have people who are like, "Hey, so I was given this really creepy object that is probably cursed." It's like when people find things like in the woods, hanging from trees, and it's like an effigy of some kind. It's like, "Oh, let me just pluck that off the tree and take it home." And it's like, what is wrong with you? You have some sort of death wish. Gosh, humans, I swear, they're always trying to just off themselves in the weirdest of ways. Um, what a harrowing story, my goodness. So, what a cheeky. So, how does this resolve? Like, did you do anything with that necklace? Did you see the ghost again? Like, what happened?
I did not want to see the ghost again. I was very determined to not see her again at that point
Mm-hmm.
because it had already come a little too close. I had too many bruises left over from the last encounter. Uh, so we were on a college campus. My first instinct with things like that is to bury them. I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
anywhere I could dig up. Second thing, I was going to burn it. They were wooden beads. This was clearly a native or indigenous sort of working that was attached to them. Burning it would release it back to where it came from,
Mm-hmm.
not bind it to a single location. Didn't have anywhere I could burn anything. Only option that I had was water. We were very close to the Kentucky River, and
Mm.
she was related to a people that are aquatically based to some extent. They're
Mm-hmm.
sort of island, coastal, regional. So I figured water was the only real option we had. So we took the string of beads, wrapped it around a rock, threw it in the bottom of the Kentucky River.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Never saw her again after that point. So I, at this point, hope that she made her way back to where she came from because I really don't think she was fully malicious. I think she was just trying to protect her people, her beliefs, her family,
Yes.
whatever it was. She just got a little aggressive with me, and that was okay, but she needs to go back where she came from so that I can stay where I came from. You know.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Um, yeah, when it comes to protective like entities and everything like that, they can be quite feral.
Yes.
And that's kind of the sense that I get from your story. You have this young sort of spirited thing, but with teeth. Like that
Teeth.
that
All
that
the
is
teeth.
such a crazy visual.
All
Just
the teeth.
oh my goodness. Um, oh my wow. Um, wow. Yes, that is a fantastic personal ghost story. That is, but you said that that's not your scariest one?
No. That is
Oh,
not the one that I consider the scariest, no.
well, now I want to know what the scariest one is. And I know this is just story time with Stephanie Bingham, but I don't think the listeners are going to complain because this is fascinating.
I think the one that's the scariest to me isn't the scariest to other people because like there's so much drama in the story I just gave you. Like that
Mm-hmm.
experience was just it's a classic inhuman haunting. Like that is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But the one that scared me the worst happened when I was in high school. And you're a high school kid, you're staying up late reading a book in bed because again, I was a studious child and this is my idea of
I
fun.
love that. Yes, as a high school student, do what you do. And I'm thinking kegers and
Yes.
roller rinks and that sort of thing. No, reading a book in bed, of course.
Yes. We're talking like 2 a.m., but still reading a book in bed. And I've seen ghosts my entire life. It's not uncommon for certain spirits to come into the bedroom at night. And one of them in particular will sit on the edge of my bed and he will talk to me. He's done this since I was two, really.
Hmm.
Like, this is a consistent thing, nothing out of the ordinary. So I was laying on my side reading a book in the middle of the night, and I feel the energy change. And it wasn't aggressive, it was just something is there, something's manifesting, nothing crazy. And I thought it was him. And I felt more than heard, really, then
Hmm.
move towards the bed and then sit down. I could feel the bed go down next to me. And I'm like, it's him. He's here to talk. But again, sullen teenager, I don't want to talk. I'm reading my book. Leave me be.
Yeah.
So I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't say anything. And the next thing I know, it brings its legs up into the bed and it lays down next to me, sort of spooning me like I'm the little spoon here and wraps its arm around me.
Ooh. Ooh.
I lost my mind.
Yeah. Living
Like
or not, that is not cool.
I was so freaked out. So I was a ballerina. I jumped out of the bed, like full on. It was
Plie
pretty,
just out of there. Yes.
the legs out of the bed over where the thing was, panicking. And it took me a minute to sort of realize who the spirit was and that it wasn't trying to be creepy, it was trying to be comforting, but I was so freaked out. I went and I sat in the bathtub for a few hours because if I'm in the bathtub, I can't feel it go down next to me if something sits down.
Oh, yes, yes.
Therein was the logic. But that moment of it just crawling into bed with me still to this day freaks me out to no end.
Absolutely. That's terrifying. I mean, that's like a
Right?
worst nightmare scenario. And like I said, living or not, like having a man just scooching to bed next to you that you don't even
And
know,
then
like,
wrap his arm around.
ugh. Ugh.
Creepy.
Listeners, you cannot see, but Stephanie and I are both doing the heebie-jeebie dance with
Yes.
our shoulders and our hands. Ugh. Yes. Oh, that's ugh. Um, actually, so do you have any advice for people who feel like they might feel entities or presences like near them? Like, is there a way to, communicate with them or to, you know, like when you say you talk with these entities, like how does one go about doing that?
So I started off in a weird spot. I started off fully seeing them. I couldn't tell the difference between the living and the dead when I was little. I
Ooh.
had no idea that some of the people I was talking to, they looked very solid to me, weren't. So my experience there really isn't helpful, but to some people that I've worked with over the years, I found that playing games with them is a great way to start. Something simple, something yes or no, pennies, very useful. Heads for this, tails for no, I'm going to leave it here
Mm.
and see if you can move it. See if you can, you know, pull it that way.
Yeah.
I've also had people find yes or no games with red or black in cards being useful. If the next card is red, is it a yes or is it a no, or that sort of thing. Playing
Right.
games like that as a way to start. And when you start to sort of feel where yeses feel like this and nos feel like this, because the energy generally is different, you can start to try and play a more complicated game. Well, this is yes and this is no. What is right and what is left?
Mm-hmm.
What, you know what I mean? Start trying to play games that way. And
Yes.
it's really just learning to understand your own internal symbol set and what the world or what the energy feels like to you. So you have to be very observant to how you are feeling personally, but
Mm.
how that's reacting to the world around you. And once you get that down, you can get to where you know what the spirit is, you can know what they want, and you can have a long conversation with them. Sometimes you want to do it out loud. I would not suggest doing that when you're around normal people. They will look at you funny.
Good advice. Good advice. Um, yeah, I think it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people could,
Mhm.
be more in tune with the other side, with, other entities and whatnot. But um, I think a lot of humans don't trust their own instincts. They don't trust their own feelings and that sort of thing, you know?
Mhm.
How does one get over your own way? Do you-
I have found that proving it to yourself, especially if you're having dreams, dreams
Mm.
are the easiest ones to prove to yourself. If you're having a dream, write it down immediately. Write it down in ink so that you can't go back and change it. Date it
Mm-hmm.
so that when those phrases come up again, you can go back and be like, no, I know for a fact that I heard this on this day at this time. I know I did. Because once you start to have just those couple of, yes, this happened and I know it happened,
Mm-hmm.
that confidence starts to build. And you're always trying new things. You're always sort of nervous. Like every time I've gone out to do something publicly,
Mm-hmm.
it's a matter of, yeah, I've done this before. Will it work today? And you
Mm.
just kind of work through that. As a vampire, you might not understand that, but for humans, it's very important.
Yes, I know it's difficult for human, and most of my listener base is human, so that's why I ask these questions. For
Absolutely.
them, they feel like it's an innate thing, like you have to be born with it or not at all, and it's just I feel like humans have more potential than they realize. In communicating with otherworldly things. Um, and so we've covered monsters,
Yes.
cryptids, ghosts. How are you with UFOs?
Terrified at all times.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, so not even if we don't have to broach the subject or anything if you don't want to, but it's just I'm curious. Do you have any UFO experiences?
I do not. And I think that's why they scare me because I've seen the other things.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I'm dealing with there, but the idea of a UFO, specifically a UFO or an alien, petrifying. But
Mm-hmm.
when you start comparing UFO stories and Fae abductions, basically the
Mm.
same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And those I'm good with. Fae, totally fine. Aliens, absolutely not.
That's interesting. That is so weird because yes,
Semantics.
a lot of people draw similarities between Fae and UFOs, and actually some believe that they are one and the same. So the fact that you're terrified of one and totally fine with the other is so just controversial. My goodness.
Hmm.
Here's something for you because you brought with you to the studio your little Kelly Hopkinsville goblin.
Oh.
Now, there is a theory that the goblin of Kelly Hopkinsville fame is actually a UFO. What do you feel about that?
I feel like there is a substantial amount of evidence for that. The day before the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter was the Green Claw attack in Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
So 45 minutes away, there was a UFO sighted, a creature that attacked a woman in a river,
Mm-hmm.
and Men in Black that later showed up as well.
Mm.
The next day, you have a UFO sighted, the Kelly Goblins sighted, and then you have the government, literally from the local Air Force base, there to investigate a glowing pile of goo and then quickly rushing off a item that was found that was never recorded or never reported publicly.
Mm.
And then within about a week, the family that lived at Kelly could no longer live at their house and had to move and never returned.
Mm.
I think that sounds very alien.
Yes, I think so too. So you have this cute, cuddly little plushie, but terrified, are we?
Terrified. Terrified. I grew up very close to Kelly. So we would go down there every time we
Ah.
went to Hopkinsville. Like I live between Kelly and Henderson. So they were both day trips. And every time we would go, we would have to stop by and see the saucer and talk about the aliens.
Wow, yes.
So they're almost cuddly in my mind.
Yes.
But I still like to point out that we never saw them getting out of the saucer. We just
Mhm.
saw them approaching the house. So there was a saucer and the goblins in close proximity, but we never saw them getting off the saucer. So I can still keep my maybe they were aliens.
Yeah, there's a level of separation there. I think yes, yes. A plausible deniability,
Yes.
perhaps. Yes. Well, Stephanie, I can listen to you tell stories all night long. I literally could. But now I think we're going to get into some paranormal gossip. Tonight's gossip is actually about the Kelly Hopkinsville goblins. Over the weekend, some Kelly Hopkinsville goblins have emerged from the caves in Kentucky, from the Mammoth Cave system. I assume that's where they live. I mean, they kind of pop in and out. They like to go to different dimensions like the rest of us, paranormal entities and monsters. But they came out of the cave. They are partaking in the human tradition of around Halloween, scaring the wits out of people by dressing up like clowns. Now, they have a little bit of an edge here because of their stature and how weird they are shaped with their giant ears and their big eyes. So dolled up in clown makeup with red noses and curly rainbow wigs. They are not just terrifying, but just downright disturbing. For those that don't know, usually on the East Coast, because I think on the West Coast people would get totally nailed. On the East Coast, people like to dress up as clowns and then just stand maniacally in places and scare innocent bystanders and sometimes even chase them with like giant mallets or knives or what have you. Well, the Hopkinsville goblins thought this was just a grand idea and thought, well, it's been a while since we've caused any mayhem or ruckus. So they've been dressing up as clowns and trying their hand at being creepy, although they look more like toys than they do humans and clowns. So they actually have children walking up to them directly, much to the chagrin of the poor goblins because they were trying to scare, not entice. So that is the current gossip. So, KH goblins, if you are listening, maybe put down the big clown shoes and just go back to your caves, maybe. Have you heard about these clowns just showing up randomly in places and that sort of thing?
Yes, it's terrifying.
So, are you scared of clowns?
Not generally, but a clown in the middle of the woods I'm walking through, I'm not okay with that.
Absolutely. Context is everything. Under a big
Yes.
top, love a clown. A clown is a
Yes,
great thing and laugh for days. A clown in a dark alleyway at 2 a.m. No, thank you.
exactly. And any clown with a mallet, I'm immediately out.
Yes, malicious malleted clowns need not apply at all. Well, my friend Stephanie Bingham, I cannot tell you how wonderful it was to have you on the show. Where can people find you?
If they want to get in touch with me, tell me a ghost story, tell me about what weird things are happening to them, reach out to me on Instagram. Best place to find me. I'm at Amarna Marie, Amarnamarie. It is my cat's name. Terribly sorry. But that's the best place to find me. Do go check out the Feminine Macabre. All the volumes are great, and the open for submissions right now. So send those in, ladies. And
Fantastic.
other than that, keep your eyes peeled. I'm expecting an announcement soon of another project that I was working on, so that should be fun.
How wonderful. And maybe come back on the show and talk about it.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, and everything will be in the show notes for all of my listeners. Again, Stephanie, thank you so much for being on the show. And please come back with more stories.
Anytime. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that's all for the show tonight, kiddies. Remember, embrace the dark, the strange, and unusual. It just may embrace you back. Please consider becoming a Patreon member of the show. You can be a Baby Bat Sticker Club member where you get stickers every month, or you can be a Tarot Speakeasy member where you can get a tarot reading and tarot card sent to you every month. Please subscribe on patreon.com/The Vampire Talk Show. This has been an Opus Nox Media production. To find out more, go to opusnoxmedia.com.